Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Surreal Body Podcast. We're back again, Dr. Nick Ciotti and myself, and we have a very special guest, an international guest today, Petra Brunnbauer. And Petra is an award-winning mind-body coach, founder of the Jōrni Wellbeing Platform. She's the host of a globally ranked Jōrni podcast and the author of her new book, The Functional Freeze Formula. With a master's in psychology and as a doctoral student in mind-body medicine, she is committed to advancing holistic approaches to health and healing. So it's her mission to make holistic healing accessible and transformative, empowering individuals worldwide to take charge of their well-being and thrive. So welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much, Zeke. And thank you, Nick, for hosting me here today. It's an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be here.
Excited to have you.
Well, I appreciate being on your podcast in the past and sharing my story. And we had a lot of similarities that we learned about each other in terms of just the concentration and the stress and a lot of things that can come out of different traumatic events. And I know your focus is on the female when it comes to the functional freeze, just really trying to remove by education the feelings of being burned out, overwhelmed, a lot of these things. So share with us a little bit about some of those typical stress management strategies that you found that have worked for you, because you were like I say, product of my product. You were a product of your product. So just share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah, thank you, Zeke. And you know what? I have to smile because that's actually how all of this started, is that those things didn't work for me. So I tried a lot of the typical stress things that people usually go to. I think one of them my doctor said was exercise, sleeping better, cutting out sugar from my diet, all of the things that the doctors usually would say to you when you're not in a great mental health state and you're not feeling well physically. And I did try, I think, all of those things and then hundreds more. And I didn't really find any one thing that helped. And that is what actually got me started on this journey. It confused the heck out of me because I was wondering what was wrong with me. I tried all these things. I did meditation, yoga. Instead of making it calmer, it actually caused panic attacks. And so I really had no idea what was happening to me. And then I found out that there are many people and many women who feel exactly like I do, who have some of these exact same experiences. And that, of course, made me curious. I have a very curious mind, and I wanted to know what was happening. I wanted to know why these things didn't work. And I have to say, some of them worked sometimes. So, I would do maybe hypnosis and I would be great for a few days, but then I would have all of the challenges again, like sleep problems, weight problems, anxiety. I would forget things all the time, and just I would be so exhausted all the time and overwhelmed with life, where I almost felt like, why can't I handle life the way that all these other people seem to handle it just fine? And that's what sent me on this lifelong journey, I feel like it will be, to figure out what's happening in my body, what's happening in my mind, and why these things were so short-lived. So to answer your question, it kind of didn't work. So I found a lot of things that didn't work by themselves.
Well, in your book, Functional Freeze, which I purchased, by the way, I'm haven't
Oh,
started it, but I have bought it. It introduces a holistic framework to help people shift out of the functional freeze. So, what does all that involve, and what kind of tools or practices support the process?
yeah. Thank you for buying my book, by the way. That's so very kind. I'm very excited. I hope that you find it interesting and something in there that kind of gives you a moment where you say, "Oh, this could be cool to try out." And the journey took me down the road where a lot of the things that were suggested to me to try out were things that didn't address the nervous system. They didn't actually address any of the deeper layers. So they were mental sometimes. I had talk therapy, which, worked a lot with the mind. I think I spent nearly a decade in talk therapy. So we explored some great topics, but it just didn't get down to sort of the physical foundation. And it wasn't until I started exploring that part of it, the somatic part of it, the part of where stress and trauma actually live in our bodies and they stay there, they get stuck there. It wasn't until I really explored that level of it that some things started to make sense. And when I put this all together in the functional freeze formula, this was after, I want to say, about 2 decades of trial and error of trying to figure out what would work and what didn't work for me, and coming to these conclusions by listening to a lot of experts in the field. I spend a lot of time reading Gabor Mate or Dr. Peter Levine and Stephen Porges. I read about the polyvagal theory. I tried to really educate myself on what everyone was saying and how those pieces could fit together. And so that's what I tried to do in the functional freeze formula, is putting these little pieces, these levels that I found together into one framework so that people can look at that and say, okay, the yoga by itself didn't work for me. The meditation by itself didn't work for me. The hypnosis by itself didn't work for me. But putting it together in a framework and putting it together in a sequence and addressing different levels at the same time, that I felt made a difference. And I just want to say here that functional freeze in itself hasn't been studied. So it is part of my mission to actually be able to study that, hopefully with my upcoming studies now. But we do have a lot of research on chronic stress, and we do have a lot of research on trauma and what that does to the mind and the body. And so a lot of what I base the research on in functional freeze formula is from chronic stress research and from stress research. And luckily we do have quite a lot of that and extensive research on that as well. But that's kind of how that fits together. So the framework in itself brings together the mental level, it brings together the physical, somatic level, it even brings together the energetic level. And I know a lot of people kind of smile and go, oh yeah, okay, all this woo-woo stuff. But when I started learning about the energetic systems that run in the body, so we look to traditional Chinese medicine or we look to Ayurveda, it's also now been proven that these meridians, these energy channels in our body exist. So this is no longer a myth. This has been proven and we can work with these systems. And that was one of the final big pieces that I was missing in my journey, was the energetic piece. And so the framework puts all of those levels together. And I've created 6 flows, and they're kind of designed for different ways that you might be feeling. If you're very activated, sort of like fight flight, if you're shut down a little bit, like a freeze state or a fright state, that takes you through different flows that you can do. They're about 20 minutes, and that starts helping to regulate your nervous system and actually working at the core of what keeps us stuck in functional freeze.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I know, me personally, looking into holistic health in general, you go into the mainstream rabbit hole, it's all exercise and diet, and then you go into mainstream mental health and it's either medications or talk therapy. But I personally believe one of the big factors, you called it kind of the energy piece, energy, spirituality, whatever you want to call it, there's a third piece of the triangle that I feel like Western medicine and Western mental health just doesn't grasp, and people call it woo-woo just because they don't understand it. But a lot of this is the oldest ancient stuff that certain societies have understood for thousands of years, and it's, if anything, it's the most tried and true stuff many a times. And again, you refer to it as the chakras and meridians or whatever, but there is this energetic portion that really gets super ignored in Western medicine, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we do actually have a lot of scientific backing nowadays that speaks to the fact that this is real. That, for example, tapping, I think there are now over 400 scientific studies that prove all sorts of benefits from tapping. And of course, the same with heart-brain coherence. If you look to the HeartMath Institute, and they've been studying this since the 90s. So it's no longer a mythical piece of our health journey, I feel, but yet it's not talked about mainstream. And it was sort of that missing piece. So when I put that part in with the somatic part and with the mental part and the emotional part, that's when things really started to shift.
Now, I'm familiar with HeartMath. I've even got one of their little devices, the one you clip to your ear and you do your breathing and follow that stuff, which is super cool to do because you get to see it, at live time versus just sitting there and breathing. Having that scientific feedback on it, is pretty cool to be able to train your heart coherence. Can you go into tapping a little bit? I'm not super familiar with it. Is that the EFT therapy? Is that what that is?
Yeah, exactly. So EFT is part of tapping, and it's the emotional freedom techniques. The EFT is I believe an actual trademark name for it. So some people just call it tapping because that's what you're doing. So
Yeah, gotcha.
it uses the acupressure points along the energy meridian. So there are specific points, and you literally just take your fingers and you tap on them. Most of them are on the face and then on the upper body. And when you take a look at traditional Chinese medicine, for example, you can see how these points line up with the different meridians. So when we're tapping here, for example, is the stomach meridian. When we're tapping here is the kidney meridian. So we're addressing different points along these energy meridians, and we are moving energy in the body. Sometimes energy gets stuck in the body. Sometimes it actually slows down or goes backwards, which I'm guessing is also not a really good thing in my experience. But with tapping, you can start to move this energy in specific ways. And at the same time, you say phrases. You don't have to, but generally in EFT, you will say phrases with it as well. And between focusing on these phrases of what's happening to someone when they have a challenge, be that they have pain or they have sadness or anxiety or any number of things that they're experiencing, they can say these phrases and tap on the sequence, and they will usually have pretty great results. I use EFT tapping a lot, so I'm again kind of a product of that as well, and I find it to be very, very helpful. But there are many studies that show that it reduces cortisol, it reduces depression, it reduces anxiety. So there are a lot of scientific studies that back the use of EFT. So I find that to be actually it's a really easy tool to learn, and you don't need any specific equipment for using it. So that's why I think people love it a lot.
There was a doctor that I worked closely with back in South Carolina when I lived right in Charlotte at the border, and he was a holistic neurologist, and he had um, red light laser therapy in one area. He had tapping in another. He had speech therapy. He had a lot of his patients were autistic children, so every room kind of had a different practice. And I remember tapping was one of them, and one of the places was, I think it was right between your temples, and then another one was right at the top of the middle of your forehead. What, isn't it?
Yeah, you tap. Well, usually we tap here and we tap on the outside. At the end, we also tap the top of the head. So I think everyone maybe develops a little bit of their own points if they're working with specific audience or specific clients and maybe specific complaints as well. But the sort of basic thing takes you through a set routine of points.
Yeah, I'm
That's
definitely
great.
going to check that out. I haven't tried. Now that you're talking about it, I feel like I've definitely heard about it before, but never looked into it past that. But yeah, very interesting. I'm going to check that out myself because, like you said, stuff that's physically easy to do, that's not extremely time consuming. I mean, it's definitely worth trying it out, and especially when a lot of stuff, yeah, on the surface, you're like, that's whatever. But when you can start to show actual studies and evidence, yeah, that's can't deny that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like there are actually a lot of energy-based tools and things that are called also energy medicine, that they're no longer in this kind of fairy tale mythical realm, right? They're right up there with evidence-based techniques. And that's the kind of things that I like trying out. I like using them. And that's the kind of things that you will find in the framework, because I do feel that people are very educated nowadays. They have access to the internet. They can look these things up, and just telling them to do something without any kind of studies or any kind of backing is sometimes quite challenging. So I like having techniques available that have been proven, that have been studied, and that have actually shown benefits for people when they use them as well.
Well, I know that one of your main focuses is women, when it comes to the functional freeze. Just because professional women as entrepreneurs, they're in high stress environments, they're mothers, they have a family. There's a lot more hats that they wear. Um, what have you what have you found, or what have been some of your success stories with working with others, in that arena?
Yeah, I find that stress and chronic stress, and I think also chronic pain, if I remember correctly, are disproportionately happening to women. And there are a variety of reasons for that. We don't know for sure with functional freeze because, like I said, it hasn't been formally studied yet as its own thing, its own condition. But from chronic stress research, we can tell that women are often more affected. And I do believe, like you said, it's because we have a lot of different responsibilities on top of usually having a career or full time work in some way, and the family and the household and those things. So, usually when I work with women, it's because the bottom has fallen out somewhere in this whole story. They're having a mystery illness that nobody can diagnose. They've seen 10 doctors, the labs are clean, they don't know what it is, yet they have an illness or a pain, or they can just tell something is wrong. Maybe they're not sleeping well. They might even have chronic pain after an injury or an accident that they've been told there's nothing we can do. The bone has healed, but the pain's still there, but everything looks fine. And it's usually in those situations almost this end of the rope where they end up coming into actually stress research and burnout research and thinking, oh, maybe this is something that could be going on. And so when I work with women, a lot of the times they've already been around the block many times. They've seen many different specialists, had a litany of tests, and physically and physiologically, there is nothing that looks wrong on paper. And yet they're having all these complaints. And so what I work with a lot is chronic pain, because that is something that I went through as well. So it's familiar to me, and I know how it impacts your quality of life. So any of the pains that people have after maybe they had a sprain, a break, or maybe the pain just came mysteriously. That happens as well. Back pain, neck pain, knee pain is another one. Shoulder pain. I've had a lot of shoulder pains recently. So these unexplained things that hang around sometimes for years, and we are able to resolve the pain on the basis of actually digging deeper and finding out what's going on emotionally, what's going on somatically in your body, what kind of things have you experienced, and has that gotten stuck in the body somewhere. So a lot of chronic pain, chronic illness, and a lot of sleep issues. It's one of the things that I think gets impacted when you are very stressed of sleep. It's one of the first things. You either can't sleep or you sleep too much, but sleep seems to really be thrown off. And so that's something I work with. And the other thing that starts happening very often when we have trauma or chronic stress is weight gain, and a real difficulty to maintain a healthy weight. And sometimes that's due because there really are movement restrictions if there's been an accident or there has been a physical injury. And often it's because the body in its state of being in the survival mode, there's cortisol and adrenaline coursing all the time, and there just is no more reset button for the nervous system. And so women, I think, and like I said, I don't have any scientific studies for this yet, but it seems that women are affected by that and then have a very hard time maintaining a healthy weight. So those are some of the things I work with. And of course, there is the anxiety that goes along with that, mental health challenges. A lot of women just have completely lost connection to any kind of joy or feeling alive. They're mostly working on autopilot, going through life, just doing things, staying alive and functioning, going to work, and have lost that connection. So those are some of the things I work with and where we have seen really great success, and people coming back after some weeks or months and just saying, I went for my first hike. I haven't been able to hike in years because of this pain I had. I went for my first hike, and things like that, where it just really, that puts a smile on my face because I just know how restricting chronic pain, chronic illness, and mental health challenges can be, and working through that and resolving that can make such a huge difference in quality of life.
So, what are some of like the mind specific related techniques that you would do working with people? Because like I know I'm definitely big into the mind and emotions manifesting physical issues, and a lot of this I think stems from trauma. And I always kind of say pretty much everyone has trauma. It's just mild, moderate, or severe, which category are you in. But like I'm a big fan of doing some of like Joe Dispenza's work and that type of stuff, and a lot of that's more of just focused towards the mind side, although there's a lot of the kind of energy work involved in that too. But I mean, essentially, yeah, science is catching up, proving that some of these things can be almost purely manifested through in the body through these patterns we get into. We almost get addicted to these negative emotions because they're essentially potent chemicals in the body. Whenever you have a negative emotion, you release chemicals and you form it. You don't want to be addicted to it, but most people don't want to be addicted to whatever they're addicted to. What is some of the work you do with resetting that mind part of it too? If you go down this rabbit hole, you inevitably end up at some meditation techniques, which I think are great for a lot of people. But like you said, you started doing meditation and it made you more anxious at one point. So what is the balance, and what are some of those things you do that are kind of in that mind side of things that can release some of that energy and move some of that energy?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And you're right, it is a rabbit hole once you start looking into that. So I read a lot about neuroscience to start off with because I thought that what was happening to me was happening in my head. And that's also why I spent a really long time in therapy. And so from the neuroscientific perspective, I found, of course, that there are regions in the brain that are affected when we have chronic stress. Some of them get enlarged, some of them shrink. And those are all involved in how we express our stress responses and how well we can handle stress and manage it. So the brain in a physical state is affected by chronic stressors, no doubt about that. And there are techniques that affect neuroplasticity, so your brain's ability to rewire itself. And there's different techniques that you can do with that. You can also use neurofeedback. I don't personally do that, but those are some of the things that you could do. And they will work on what you talked about, that we kind of get addicted to these negative feelings. So whatever we experience in a more drastic way, in a very direct way, in a very impactful way, the brain will start building out those neural connections. So it's like a highway. If many cars use it all the time, it just becomes really big. And that's the brain, the pathways that we use a lot and that we become habituated to. Those are sort of the default loops that we will go to, and it works the same with chronic stress. So you can do things to help rewire the brain, and some of those, as you said, they're visualizations, they're meditations, those are things that you can do to work with neuroplasticity and start making some of those new neural pathways so that your brain actually starts using different patterns when it comes to chronic stress and different coping mechanisms. But the problem is that with any of those, we're usually working with the conscious mind. And so you're relying on just your willpower to push yourself to rewire the brain. And that can be challenging for a lot of people. And it was challenging for me as well, because I didn't have that willpower to tell myself every day, oh, you can't have that negative thought now, you need to think this way. So it becomes kind of challenging in that sense. And so what I found worked really well is to work with the subconscious mind. And you can access the subconscious mind even in EFT tapping. It kind of happens while you're tapping with clients. Very often it just bypasses the conscious mind and it goes straight to the subconscious mind. And same with hypnosis, for example, that works really well for working with the subconscious mind. And in those techniques, we're bypassing our filters that we have of the things that we think we can and can't do, or what we can and can't achieve. We're bypassing all these negative filters that we have, our conscious awareness of traumas that we may have experienced that are stuck in our body. We're bypassing all of that, and we're going straight to the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind, I feel, has sort of our highest good at the core of it. And so I feel you can't really tell it things to make things worse. At least in my experience, that has never happened before. Your subconscious mind is discerning enough so that when you give it instruction or you make suggestions, that it will decide if that is for your highest good or not. And if it's not, it just simply will not follow that suggestion. So in hypnosis, that's something where you can work with pain in hypnosis as well. It actually found that very effective. You can work on all sorts of limiting beliefs, on habits, on traumas, on anything that you've experienced but you don't consciously want to talk about it again or re-traumatize yourself again. You can work on all of those things with hypnosis and tapping. So those are the subconscious mind in that case. That's sort of my favorite go-to, and I found it to be most effective.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Talking about subconscious mind, which that's probably something I haven't done a ton of work with, other than I just started doing that brain tap at the office down the road for me. But I didn't even really know what I was doing when I signed up for it, to be honest. And to your point earlier, I think the classical meditation stuff can be extremely effective, but it is difficult. I have worked on this stuff for years at this point and still feel like a total newbie beginner. I mean, last year I went to one of Joe Dispenza's week-long retreats and I had a lot of good results, and I'm absolutely do not regret going. I'll probably go to another one, to be honest, but it's hard work. And then to come back and bring that into your daily routine, it's certainly not easy. So when people willy-nilly make the meditation recommendation, that's like recommending people start long distance running. Like, yeah, it's good, but it's definitely not easy for the average person to just like start doing, and it's going to just solve your problems like all of a sudden.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is sort of a physical component to that as well in the nervous system, that when you have experienced a lot of trauma or chronic stress and your nervous system is constantly in that survival mode, it's scanning sort of for the next shoe to drop because you're waiting for that, and you might not be conscious of that, but that could be happening. Actually, when you go into silence like you would often in meditation, and you go into stillness and you come into the body, that can actually be a complete alarm signal for the nervous system, because it's sensations that it hasn't maybe felt in a long time. It's sensations that feel threatening, that feel dangerous, because the nervous system is so on edge. And so if you go into meditation like I did without having the actual capacity for it, you might end up in tears, curled up in the fetal position in the corner somewhere, because it's too overwhelming. Your nervous system isn't ready for that. So that can happen. It doesn't happen for everyone, and it doesn't happen all the time, but it is something that, to say, if you work with your nervous system first and you build that resilience, you build that capacity, then meditation will feel really nice after. And it actually will create a lot of those changes that you're talking about.
And that was going to be kind of my next question is that still a worthy goal to get into the meditation and all of that once you get your nervous system a little more balanced and can build the capacity for it? It's still a good tool in the tool belt, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I love meditation, and I think I spend a good chunk of time every day doing some sort of meditation, and you don't have to sit with it. I think Joe Dispenza even offers walking meditations as well, right? He has different kinds of active meditations, so you can make that work for yourself, however that feels best. And if sitting in silence or stillness is not your thing, then choose one of the walking ones and get out in nature. That in itself, I think, is really soothing as well. And just do what works for you. It's as long as you're feeling good and that lights you up and brings you joy, I feel like that will be good for you either way.
I feel like meditation is kind of just misunderstood in general. I mean, the real goal is just to be more present, because a lot of the suffering that happens, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, we're living in the past, we're living in the future, and that's where a lot of the pain is. And you even mentioned talk therapy earlier. Talk therapy almost is just re-traumatizing yourself in certain situations because you're just rehashing out the past that traumatized you in the first place. And I've gone down those, listened to those circles of thought of people actually don't believe in talk therapy because for some people it is just literally re-traumatizing you every time you talk about it. And I kind of tend to agree with that in probably more cases than not. And that's where, your answer earlier, working with the subconscious can be much more effective and easier to start with, and a really important thing to add into a holistic approach.
Yeah, completely agree. And I feel like talk therapy definitely has its place because human connection, right, and being able to share when you're ready for that can be really powerful and very healing. But there might be a couple of steps maybe that come before that or alongside that if you're finding that talk therapy isn't really doing what you were wanting it to do or expecting it to do. And that's okay too. Then you take other steps before you work on your body, you work on your energy systems, and then maybe you return to talk therapy, and then you might find that much more healing than it was before. But yeah, like I said, I spent a long time in therapy, so I definitely felt some of what you were saying with re-traumatizing and really talking about the things a lot that happened, but not actually doing anything about them. And that was challenging in itself. So yeah, I feel like everything for everyone in their right, whatever feels right for them.
For sure.
Well, I know you've got your opportunity. You just got back from your trip in Germany, and you are also thinking about expanding this into the ability to offer retreats. And there might be a really fun venue that is called a castle that are going to be, or it will be the location for something that you and your husband are thinking about investing in. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Now, when you say that out loud, I really get excited about that. But that idea actually comes from a place of having experienced how healing locations can be. And so that might sound a little bit funny, but a lot of the healing that I personally experienced was because of certain places I went to and experienced it in that particular setting with particular people and a certain energy. And I don't know if viewers can relate to that there are certain places that they go to where they just feel so good, or they feel so energized, or they feel so healing. And you come away from a day or a weekend there and you come back almost like a new person. And because of those experiences, I thought that would be a physical part to offer alongside a lot of the virtual things that we do, like programs or the book or summits and things like that, but an actual physical in-person component where people could come and experience exactly that type of healing in person, that human connection, that experience of having a certain energy in a place. And for me, a castle is a really special place. It just, I don't know, whenever I go to a castle, it just puts a smile on my face. It has certain energy that's different than just a hotel or a regular house or even a clinic or anything like that. And so for me, I think it was clear from since I was a little child that eventually I wanted to put something into a castle. And I feel combining those healing energies with a location like that would offer people a really transformative experience, a healing experience if they were to come. So, yeah, and coming from Germany now and talking about it with different members of my family, and my aunt actually said to me, she says, "Oh, I'm not surprised at all. You've been telling me this since you were 8 years old." And I was like, "Really?"
Oh,
So apparently this has been a dream for a really long time coming.
well, now you're putting it to reality. You're bringing it to life.
I can definitely attest that going to different retreats myself, like the in-person compounding energy you get from a group with intention, I mean, it just amplifies things just tenfold compared to doing stuff A, on your own, and B, virtual. I mean, obviously that's all great and better than nothing, but yeah, doing in-person group type of retreats with intention, it just, yeah, it's definitely a special experience. And if you can add that geographic component to it, and really have the vibe going that you're trying to set up, I think that sounds like it will be amazing.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
Petra,
that's the goal.
tell us where everybody can get your book and how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So the book is called The Functional Freeze Formula, as we said, and that's actually where you can get it. It's just on the web, functionalfreezeformula.com. We at the moment have the PDF versions. So when you go there, you can purchase it and download it right away. You can, of course, purchase paperback or a hardcover on Amazon as well. It's on all the different Amazons. So whether you're in North America or you're in Europe or in Asia, it's all over the Amazon. So you can find it there. Just type in functional freeze formula and you should be able to find that online. And the majority of everything comes together on the Jōrni platform. And as you can see behind me, it's spelled Jōrni. And so it's thejōrni.com. Everything that we do is on there. The podcast is linked there. We have a blog, we host events, we do programs, we have a community. So everything sort of leads back to the Jōrni, usually in some kind of way. So if you go on that site, you will find everything that we have on offer at the moment. And we are, of course, on all the social platforms. We're on Instagram, Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. Everything's usually under The Jōrni or my personal name. And the podcast, if you want to listen to it, is The Jōrni Podcast. So you can find us on Apple, Spotify, all the different providers. We're everywhere. And yeah, there's a lot that we talk about mental health and holistic healing on the podcast. So I feel like that's a great resource also. And Zeke, of course, is on there as well. So you can listen to his episode. So the podcast, I feel, adds another puzzle piece to this whole holistic healing journey that we're trying to offer on the Jōrni platform.
And I want an invite to the castle when it's finally done too.
Absolutely. I feel like we should do a recording. Like we all get together
I'll
there and then we do a recording in a retreat or something like that.
Definitely. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on today, and thank you so much for the insight on a lot of different ways that people can heal and recover and keep an open mind to things like tapping, which I have familiarity with, and um, sharing all of what's to come. So, thank you.
So